Hour started. Welcome, everyone. Hi, it's Andrew Beach. I'm an executive coach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate value to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. Today is 3:00 p.m. Pacific time. It's called Career Happy Hour for a reason, because every week I will show up here to answer your questions about career. So what questions do you have about, I don't know, interviewing, networking, market planning, ghosting is a big thing. Work from home or work from the office. If you're having some angst about those things, let's talk about it. I'm certainly here to help you be successful and plan on being here for, typically about half an hour. And it's all dependent on your questions. I'm not here for my own health. I'm here to support your success. And I can only do that if you put questions into the chat, the comments box, wherever you're joining from, whether that's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, in my group, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Doesn't matter what platform you're on, you should be able to put a chat or a comment on this stream, and just let me know that you can hear the audio, that is coming through loud and clear for you all, and that you have any questions about these things. Also, because this is based around career or professional development of yourself, many of the attendees of today's session are really focused on one social platform, and that's LinkedIn. Not that it's the only social platform, but we really encourage you, regardless of which platform you are on, that you actually share your LinkedIn profile credentials so that we can all connect and have conversation. That's the point. It's hard enough today, isn't it, to find opportunity, to make connections, to build relationships. And when you reach out to people and you hear nothing, that's actually what we're talking about today. We're talking about being ignored. And that's really the topic for today's live stream. It's hard enough to do the networking. That's why we want you to put your LinkedIn credentials wherever you're showing up on these streams. Doesn't matter. And what you'll have is an opportunity then to meet other people. But this stream is indeed on other channels like LinkedIn, and that's where most of us are. But these other channels, you can meet other people. So maybe you go check out the stream on my other channels, and maybe you'll meet some new different people on those platforms that you hadn't met before. Also, if you feel so inclined, I'm going to share some content today on what to do when you're being ignored by a hiring team during the process of hiring, and how do you manage that whole uncomfortable waiting process. It sometimes can be very irritating, I must admit. I've been through a lot of those myself, and I've coached people through those sessions. So please, what I'd encourage you to do is share this transmission out to other people if you found it valuable. You don't have to share it publicly. You could share it in a private message, whatever you're most comfortable with. And that gives us an opportunity then to get a broader audience, more people engaged in this conversation that you can have network conversations with, because relationships with people lead to the right opportunities. Also, if you're on Restream here, you can likely come in and get live hands-on coaching by me face-to-face as we speak during this session. If you have a question and you want to get some hands-on dynamic support, then please click the link in the description. I haven't figured out a way to do that yet on Instagram. We'll get there. I'm sure some people can knock and say join. Oh, there's a little button here. Let me see what that does. Oh, invite to join. I can invite people to join. What else is here? No questions. Okay, so people can put questions in there. No, what is this other one here? Maybe that's, oh, no request to join. Okay, so yeah, you can request to join on Instagram if you want to come on, and I'll do my best to transmit that question to the other platforms here. We'll just have to see how that works out. It's a new thing to me, but you can get live coaching now. Also, if you prefer, you can come in to, sorry about that. Got something on my lip. That was weird. You can come into the backside of Restream here on those different platforms, and you can leave a question in the private chat. Just put your name in as anonymous, and put your question in the back end of Restream, and that way your question won't be made public. Won't be made public. So what's our topic today? Our topic today is being ignored in a hiring process. Being ignored in a hiring process. Now, this just doesn't apply to the hiring process. It's really anything professionally speaking. You could say, it's being ignored on the job. It's being ignored by your leader. It's being ignored by people in the company that you work for that you want to get attention from in some capacity, or support or mentorship, or whatever that looks like. And sometimes we need to ask ourselves some really solid questions. So for example, let's consider a hiring process for a moment. And let's say, generally speaking, you've made an application, put in your resume, put in the cover letter, sent it off, and all of a sudden you feel like you're being ignored, or no one's reviewing your information and you're not getting any traction. And there must be something wrong with me, or they don't see value, or what have you. The stories we tell ourselves can be rather diminishing and depressing, to be honest. So let's be cognizant of the stories that we're telling ourselves, that they may not be true. They may not be true. So don't think that everything you're telling yourself is actually true. So let's say for a moment that you've made this kind of thing, like an application, a resume, a cover letter. You put all the data that you thought was valuable to that application into the system that you're trying to get noticed in, and you feel like you're post-application being ignored or in some way ghosted by a hiring team. I would just have some questions to ask you, and this is kind of the process I go through as a coach with people that I coach. If that's something you're interested in, you're welcome to fill out the application. That's also in the description below this video. But there's a number of questions I would ask you to see if you really did everything you could to get the attention of the hiring team. And the first one is, did I get everything I can? Did I get my information to the right people? Did I get my information to the right people? So that's a question for you. And many times you would answer that, well, no, I didn't get it to a person. I put it in a system. And so sometimes this is an awakening for a lot of people I coach, that, hey, you know what? I put my information into a system. A person didn't really see it. And that's like eye-opening, isn't it? It's like, okay, there isn't something wrong with me. Now, there might be something wrong with their system. It's arguable. We don't know because we don't control that side. But the idea is, ask yourself that question. Did you get the information to the right people? The right people. Here's the second question I ask you post-application. Did I communicate my value add for the role? Right? You looked at the role description. Did you communicate a distinct value add to that role? Because it's not uncommon that when you do applications, you use one resume and one cover letter, and you put the same resume, the same cover letter on every application. And although that is time saving, it certainly isn't a way that we would encourage you to sell yourself to people in a hiring process. Now, the challenge is many people aren't going to know you as a person. They're only going to know your communications, your written communications, to be specific. And for that fact, that's why a lot of resume writers have really good business. Why? Because people have a really hard time communicating their value add through written communications, like a resume, like a cover letter. It's a very common challenge for many of us to have. I have the same challenge when writing about myself. That's why hiring a professional to do that for you is a good idea. And so, did you communicate your value add for the role in the information that you gave to the system, to the people, whatever you have out there? Look at your stuff, look at your content, and make sure that it's communicating your value add. And then that's the third question. The third question actually is kind of combined with that. Did I communicate my value add to the right people? Now, my value add might be person dependent. That's for sure. And so as you're asking yourself these questions, did I communicate my value add? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just communicated all the things I've done. and there's nothing on my resume or my cover letter to say, hey, here's what I bring to this role, and here's the person like you that could use that kind of thing, and here's why. Here's why you should talk to me. Here's why you should talk to me. It's almost like what is it? The 5 Whys or the five W's? I don't remember what it is, but it was the journalism training I had in high school and college. You know, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. We have to answer a lot of these different questions for a hiring team because they're not going to be able to fill in the blanks on their own. Because guess what? They don't know you. And know, like, trust is what sells. And know, like, trust, even in a hiring process, is really important. That's why there's so many people get hired internally, internal candidate. And you get really angry that, why did they hire that internal candidate and not talk to me? Well, the devil you know. It's the internal candidate. The internal candidate is one of the things that many of us want to be, aspire to be. And I think you just should aspire to be the internal candidate as well, or at least equivalent to an internal candidate. Next question, question number 4. What other methods can I use to communicate? I may have done my application resume, put it into their system, but what other methods could I use to communicate this value add, this message, and to get my information to the right people? So think through that for a minute, because often we think, I've done my application, I've done my resume, I've done everything I can to move my candidacy forward with this company. And is that truthfully the answer? Is the answer you did everything you could? Or are there some other methods you can consider? In fact, give me some, you might have some methods or ideas to use. Maybe that's social media. We're broadcasting on a lot of different social channels. You could reach out on social media. You could send an email. You could reach out to a family member or friend that works at the organization. Right? There's a lot of different ways that you can communicate your value over and above just making an application, checking off that box, and going to the next application. More of something, if it's not generating results, you have to question its validity for your process. That's question 4. What other methods can I use to communicate? Question number 5. What activities will I participate in if there's no communication? I've done everything I can. I've run through all these different questions. I feel like I've done everything. And so what other activities will I participate in if there's no communication? Will you set up alerts for that company so that you get their job postings? Will you reach out and start networking with people at the company? Will you apply to other roles at the company? If it's a company you're really interested in, I would advocate all of those things. If you're just looking to meet your requirements for employment benefits, then that's a different thing altogether. But the idea here is we're not looking for the spaghetti technique. And that is, hey, how much spaghetti? I know you can use a different noun for that. But how much spaghetti can I throw on the wall that will stick? And there is some of that. There is validity in that. And there is a conversion rate for many people that is unique to their own experience. And so there's activities you can participate in while you're waiting for a response, not expecting there's going to be one. Let's be clear on that. Let's not expect that there's going to be a communication, because then we're setting ourselves up for failure, right? If I expect that somebody's going to respond to me on an application, then I'm set up for failure. If I expect them not to communicate and they do, guess what? Success. I feel good about that process in my heart and in my mind. So think of some other activities you can participate in if there's no communication. Now, certainly if you have difficulty answering some of these questions for yourself, or you need support in some of these thoughts or ideas, certainly reach out to me. I'm more than happy to spend a few minutes to see how we can improve your situation. Because getting interviews is paramount. Let's be clear. There is no one activity more important in a hiring process than an interview. Because that's the one thing that precedes an offer and also gives you leverage in negotiating that offer. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a job interview. It could be a networking interview, an informational interview. I've seen people actually get opportunity just by having a conversation with someone inside the company without even knowing that there was an opportunity available. If that's you and you want to have a better acumen on how to network with people, that's also one of my sweet spots, or the categories that I help people in. So that's If you have questions on that, please put them in the comments. I'm here as a resource to you to help you get to the next level in your career, whatever that might be. So let's move to the next phase, right? The next phase is, hey, I've got the application, I've had the interview, and I feel like I'm being ignored after the interview. And so after the interview, one of the things that I encourage you to have is have a post-interview checklist, because sometimes you're so exhausted after the interview, you don't know what the next steps are. And so if you've gotten a job interview and you feel like things have gone quiet, here's some questions I would ask you. Did you send personalized thank you notes to every member of the interview team? And that could be something by email, by social media, by handwritten snail mail. I'm an advocate of all of these things. And I would certainly encourage you to send thank you notes. Always be full of gratitude, because these people have in some way, how would you say it, validated or at least thought that you had the experience necessary to be successful in that opportunity. And so if you haven't sent a thank you, I think it looks good on you if you have the opportunity to say thanks, that they will remember that. So that's the first question I had. Did you do everything you could to communicate after the interview that you were grateful that you even had it? That's the first question. Second question, can you articulate the 2 or 3 strengths you bring to the table that the interviewer affirmed in you? Let me say that again. Can you articulate the 2 or 3 strengths that you communicated or brought to the table that the interviewer said, you got these 2 or 3 things that we really need? And if you haven't gotten that kind of validation, it is so refreshing when someone says, wow, that's great. I love that you have this kind of experience. When someone says that, take a note. Take down notes on that. I think it's really helpful when someone says something nice about you that you actually write it down. It's affirmation, it's validation, and you can feed it back to the hiring team when you get done with that interview. That's why we encourage you to take notes during the interview. Anyway, so doing what you can to articulate your strength back to the interview team is what is going to help you get to the next step. Because post-interview follow-up might actually be part of the interview. Depends on the domain of expertise. But I always think about sales, right? If I was in sales and I had an interview with a sales manager and I was done with that interview, the sales manager might actually be expecting me to follow up with him 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times after that interview to see what my follow-up, how tenacious I am, how dialed in I am in following up with him after that interview, him or her. Of course, we're a gender agnostic here, but the idea is, know what that is and follow up as part of the process. Know what your strengths are. So third question, what is the timeline or next steps and how will you manage them? Sometimes we leave the interview because we feel like, we had a good performance. We thought everything went well. We got our questions answered and we just moved on. But we forgot to ask a really pivotal and important question, and that is, what is the timeline for hire and what are the next steps in the hiring process for me, because I want this job? And believe me, if you come into an interview and you communicate that you want the job, you're more likely to get it. And then you can say yes or no after the interview. An offer has been submitted to you by email. So when you get the offer, that's when we say yes or no. You have an opportunity to negotiate. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. At least you've done your part to get the offer. That's the whole point of the interview, is to give that interviewer and that hiring team enough information for them to make a decision on sending you an offer. So the timeline and the next steps are really important. Is the next step another interview? Is the next step references? Is the next step a background check? Is the next step, what is it? Is it a practical interview? I mean, we need to know what the next step is, and we need to know when and how that's going to happen. And if you don't know that before you leave the interview, I'd really encourage you to incorporate that into your process. If you need support on that, certainly it's another area of strength of mine, not just outside of the networking part of job search or career advancement or career development. It's the interviewing part. because they're so interrelated. The interviewing and the networking, the concepts there, and the techniques and the strategies that I've helped thousands of people implement and successfully gain employment, sometimes at double their salary. I think it's not something that's that hard to understand, but sometimes we just miss the little things, right? The little nuance in the approach. So please know what the timeline is, know what the next steps are. That's the third question. Of course, if you have any questions, certainly put those in the comments or the chat. Wherever you're joining from doesn't really matter, but I would like to see your questions so that I can answer them. Let's just make sure. I forgot to check that I was actually live on LinkedIn. Let's see if it's going to show me live on LinkedIn. Notifications. Yeah, it shows I'm live. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we're good on that side. Okay, so let's see. And then the fourth question, post-interview. So after the interview, the fourth question I would ask you as a coach, what is your next step when there is no communication? You've done everything you can, right? Just like after you do an application, what are the activities and the steps you are going to take when after an interview, you're not getting any dialogue? It's just you doing all the effort and not getting any mirrored response. Some might call that ghosting. I don't know if I call that ghosting because there's so much that happens. I mean, I've had candidates interview with a recruiter, and lo and behold, literally the day after that recruiter interviewed them, they quit their job and took another one, or they got laid off, or whatever. I mean, these things happen to the recruitment function just as they happen to regular operations. So don't think that recruiters are immune to any of the things that we all are feeling. But you don't control that side, where you don't control who's hired or fired, or whether or not that recruiter is going to be around and that sort of thing. But if I'm being ignored after an interview, then I want to make sure that I have some next steps to get maybe another interview. Again, interviews are paramount. Getting interviews are paramount in any career development hiring process. And that means we need to have a discrete set of steps that we take to find either another interview or to make sure that we didn't drop the ball in this post-interview process. In fact, if you want to, you could go to my website, and I think I have at andrewbeach.com, I have a link there that will allow you to get an interview checklist. This interview checklist is something that you can review and you can take a look at, and you can make sure you're not missing anything when it comes to interview, because there's a lot to think about and prepare for when you're going through a job interview. And so don't miss that step. Now, there was a third topic that I thought was kind of interesting that maybe, I don't know if I'll cover today, but it's you've gone through the interview process and it sounds like they're going to give you an offer, and all of a sudden it goes quiet. That to me is the textbook definition of ghosting. When a company is ghosting you, that's when, hey, I've done the 5, 6, 8, 10, 20 rounds of interviews. I've provided them my references. I've done a background check. I've done all these things. And all of a sudden, silence. They've already admitted to me an offer is coming. No offer. It's just gone quiet. And so, there's that is such an, I would say, obscure occurrence that sometimes it's really hard to process emotionally all the investment you've made to had nothing come through. And so the only advice I've given many people in that situation, and take it for what it's worth, is that whenever you get to a point where you think you're going to be hired, don't stop looking for work ever. Even after you get hired, don't stop looking for something better than what you just got. Keep looking, keep knocking on doors, keep networking, continually presume that what you have is good and there's always something better. Not that you're going to leave, not that you want to leave, but that you could leave if there was indeed something better. And if there was, maybe you have that transparent conversation with your employer. But the idea here is if you're not working, perhaps, or you may be working in a toxic environment. I've coached all kinds of people, and getting ignored and ghosted in that kind of capacity really is an exercise in resilience. And my advocacy is just go find another one. There's always another. It's like the bus. If you miss one bus, there's going to be another one along at some point. And believe me, there's not that it's easy and not that it isn't a processing of emotions, but it certainly is something that you can mitigate by finding other opportunities. And, it's funny, when I was in sales, one of the things that I was taught way back when is that if you generate, you won't tolerate. And now I know that's kind of an arrogant approach, right? If I'm generating business, I won't tolerate people that, maybe are kind of on the fence or what have you, or that sort of thing. But I think there is a shred of truth or a thread of truth in that statement. And that is, hey, if I've got 5 different opportunities and this one happens to go quiet, it then only hurts me if it's one that I really want, right? If it's one that you really want, then you're like, okay, I don't know how to approach this one, but the idea is, hey, I've got others. If I've got 5, this one falls out, I've got 4 more. And then I'm going to constantly be looking for other opportunities until I get the one that fits me the best. And not that it's going to be the perfect opportunity, but it fits you well for now. And then you turn and you open up the book again and you start looking for other opportunities that are better than what you have there. That means it takes a lot of proactive conversations, sometimes with an objective outsider. And that I'd be happy to be your objective outsider if you want somebody to maybe think about evaluating where you are in your process and what does that look like and that sort of thing. I do have in the description an application. You can fill that out. Just helps me understand your situation a little bit better. And if you're on Instagram, that would be in my bio. Just click the link in my bio. And I'd be happy to have a conversation with you to see how we can add value to your current situation. Whether that's working now and looking for a promotion, or you're working now and your company is threatening to go back to the office and you're just not having it, then sometimes in order to make that process a little less stressful on you, you engage somebody that can help you with those kind of things. So I don't see any questions in here from Restream or even on Instagram. Let's see. Looks like a couple people joined on Instagram. Good to see you. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll sign off for now. I do appreciate your attending here. Please share this broadcast out with someone you know that you think might find value in it. And I will see you next Friday for Career Happy Hour. Take care. Have a good weekend.